I'd like to welcome back Cheryl McDonough. Cheryl is a school improvement facilitator and an online course coordinator for Collins Education Associates, which is located in Massachusetts, correct? You're in Vermont or New Hampshire.
Actually, the Collins office has moved to New Jersey,
Oh,
but I am in New Hampshire.
right. I knew you were in New Hampshire, but when
Yeah.
I checked the website today, you were in Massachusetts for the company. So it's good to know you're in New Jersey now.
That might, yeah, I'll have to double check that because that should have been updated. But, you
You
know how
never
those,
know.
yeah, nowhere. But the office really was never the kind of office that people think about. We didn't all go there and sit around and, we're from all over the country. It was really just one room where we ship stuff.
You could have had a P.O. box for all we
Yeah,
know. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. And I want to thank you for giving the suggestion last season when you were on about doing topics rather than just talking to people. And I like the idea, and I think people were clamoring for specifically things that we've talked about. And I know what you're talking about today is going to be a huge importance to a lot of people because of the impact it has on kids. So today, we're going to be talking about CTE programs and how we can learn from them and portfolios and PBL specifically. So, thank you for joining me again, Cheryl. I appreciate your time and all your knowledge.
It's always a pleasure, Norm.
So, tell me a little bit about the work that you've been doing. I have always known you as a writing person, but as we did our PD with you, I learned there was so much more than that. It was
Yeah.
all about good teaching and good outcomes and working with kids. And now working with CTE programs. So, tell me what you're doing now.
What I'm doing with CTE programs, first of all, is learning because those teachers are teaching me so much about what actual good practice is. Their kids are engaged and happy to be there every day. So it's because they're doing stuff. So I've been asked, especially in the state of Vermont, that has to take the work keys test, which is something I had never heard of. Have you heard of work keys?
Yes.
It's a hard test.
Yes, it is.
And the kids can't, the schools don't get their funding if the kids don't meet a certain standard. So they called me in. And what I've been doing is using literacy skills to improve the content area, just like we did in the academic schools.
Hmm.
So instead of teaching the kids how to write an essay, I have them do a safety inspection. So I'm tying everything that we do with reading and writing to their content areas. And you can imagine when I first go in, they're all like, "Are you kidding me? I don't want to see her," blah, 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 which I'm used to. Um, but within like an hour, they're like, wait a minute. We can do this. I said, yeah, I'm not a fool. I'm not going to come in here and say you got to write the 5 paragraph essay. In fact, I'm not going to tell anybody to write the 5 paragraph
Mm.
essay, to be honest with you. Um, so we've had a lot of engagement and I'm continuing to update things. A great example I had last month that I created for a school right on the Canadian border. I actually look into Canada while I'm teaching.
Well, that's beautiful.
Well, it is beautiful and it's right on a
Yeah.
lake. It's gorgeous. But we vocab drives everything. But vocab really drives the CTE. I mean, it can be a safety concern if you don't know what a word means.
Right.
So I've developed something called task words, and we'll talk about that later on if we get to it. Those to me are the CTE version of general academic vocab.
Okay.
So task words. However, I started thinking about the words, the terms of art for all of their courses. And I said, I'm going to go in and do Greek and Latin roots. And they're like, Cheryl, we're not. And I've been going to some of the school. I said, no, 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 just give me this morning. So I created kind of a gamey thing where they got a list of word parts and they looked, I said, just look at these for 5 minutes. They're like, oh my God, all of our words have these parts in them. I said, I know. Then I said to them, I want you to create two new words from you putting word parts together. And on the back, I want you to tell me what each of the parts means and what you think the whole word would mean now. And then you're going to go around the room and find somebody, kind of like quiz trade, and you're going to show them your word, but not the back, and have them guess what the word means. They're
I
like,
love
we could do this every day. I said, I
it.
know.
I
And
know.
they said, this isn't like it at all. So once again, what I'm trying to do is to turn literacy into part of everything. And
I,
it's definitely part of the CTE.
well, and that's something that's a big divider, a gap, um, a gap remover when you have good language skills and you're able to read and write and do things and communicate effectively with other people. That is big across the board, but especially when you're in the CTE programs, because like you said, there are safety issues. There are common terms that have to be known
Right,
throughout the industry if you're going to
right.
be successful. So I love that.
I know. And they at the end they said, this might be the best day we ever had with you. I said, I know, and I told you to wait. Give me a chance. So they said, that's a great, people always say to us, do vocab, 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 but they don't tell us how. I
Right.
said, oh no, you've got to make vocab a game every day.
Yeah,
You've got
I
to
like
make it a
that.
game. You've got to make it fun. I'm a big fan of that, as you know, even when
Mhm.
I do my adult workshops. Let's get up, let's move around, let's go see a friend. You've got to have activity with learning, especially with kids. And I say to people a lot, let's think back to when our own kids were 2, 3, 4 years old. We didn't say, go sit in the kitchen today and I'm going to give you a lesson on, what science. No, sit down. Don't you get up and move around. No, we take them outside. We look at the, blah, 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 or we don't sit them down the next day and say, today we're going to do a lesson on history. Sit down. No, we take them to the park, whatever. So I say, human beings all learn the same way. We're just learning different things. Kids have to be active, they have to touch, they have to see. And I've always been an advocate of that. But I think what the CTE people were missing was a literacy. Lots of literacy people say, I'll come into your CTE school. But they said, this is the first time somebody did it for CTE.
Right.
So in the past, the Collins Company, we go in and just do Collins writing. They're like, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. So I've really created a division just for CTE teachers, and we're having a blast.
I love that. I don't know if you knew this, but prior to me venturing out into this consulting role, when I was at Twinsburg High School or Twinsburg Schools, we started a college and career readiness program, and we worked with all the businesses around the area. And we took our teachers out into the industry. One of our partners actually paid for them to do that. And their eyes were truly open to what is needed to prepare kids. And
Right,
I'm not saying this in a negative way, but teachers don't know industry unless they're in the industry. We think we know what businesses want, but we really don't because we've been in education almost our
correct.
entire life. So to have teachers recognize, what CTE teachers already know about what is expected in the workplace, I think is a huge, huge thing to
Absolutely.
understand.
And I think that when we say literacy to anybody, they think of writing an essay and reading an article or a story or a novel. That's literacy. And I think literacy goes into everything we do, whether it's art, whether it's welding. My biggest fan in Vermont is the welding teacher. He loves me. Oh, I have like 8 schools up there, I think. But this one guy, Ben, every time I pull in, he's like, give me your car keys. I'm going to go fill you up so you don't have to do that on your way home. I mean, and when he was the one the first day I went in, he's like, I'm not doing this. And now it's just because suddenly they're like, wait a minute, you're respecting us. It's a respect thing. I'm not going to try and make you do what I did as an English teacher. I want to, so, and every one of the schools that I worked with last year, their work keys scores went up. Because I said to
That's
them, the work keys test is not a career test, it's a reading and writing test. Don't, even the math, if you can't read the question, you can't do it. So every one of the schools, now, were some of them really low? Sure. But I'm not looking for perfection. Just keep on
right.
progress, progress.
Growth.
Yep. Yep. So they're very happy. So I've got more contracts in Vermont. And it's a great place to be, by the way.
With with your understanding of vocabulary, I think that it's also important to point out that you mentioned that work keys is a reading, understanding, literacy test. I think almost all tests are that.
They are.
Um, I actually did my master's thesis on readability of the MEP back in the day in Michigan, and our seventh grade science test was written at a 10th grade level. And they said that, well, that's because of the vocabulary, which they didn't have a vocabulary list to go with the test. So our kids really didn't
Right.
have the specific information needed. They've done better. They have released vocabulary lists now. But back in the day, I mean, this is early on in the testing process because I'm old.
Not as old as
I,
me.
I know. Early on in that testing process, they weren't formed out the way they really needed to be. So I love the work you're doing with the CTE schools. Now, I think the important piece is what can we learn as regular classroom teachers, and I hate to say regular, but the traditional classroom teacher, and what we can learn on how to form great PBLs and what that means for our teaching.
Well, I think the first thing um, that I had to understand, because I started my life as a very traditional teacher, I taught Shakespeare honors.
Ooh.
Okay. Oh, don't. I loved it, but I
Yeah,
didn't learn to be a teacher until I started running a PBL school, which I never wanted to run. But the superintendent said, I need you over there for a while. And now I wouldn't teach any other way. But I think the thing we learned from CTE is celebrate the failures because the failures are when the kids learn. In academics, we often don't do that. It's either you're right or you're wrong, which means you're a winner or a loser. In CTE, they just, no, you didn't change that oil right. Let's go back and do it again. You had a good beginning. We don't do enough of that, I think, in the academic classrooms. Okay. And so I say to the teachers, tell the kids it's okay to be wrong. I'm wrong every day. It's okay to be wrong. Let's learn from the wrong instead of trying to cheat and hide it or pretend. Let's make this a learning environment where it's risk free. I don't have to be scared that I'm going to be the loser again because I'm wrong.
right.
So that's the biggest lesson. Celebrate the mistakes.
I think I'm actually reading a few books right now that they talk about that a lot, where we want to set up, and it's one of them is called hacking questioning or question hacking or something of that nature. And we want to set up that freedom to make mistakes, but often how we resolve that with our feedback isn't promoting it whatsoever. So it's something very careful that you have to do and very intentional to make sure that you are feeding those mistakes as a positive thing.
Well, and I think traditionally we're not set up for that. We give a
Mhm.
test and that's the end.
Correct.
And people say to me, Cheryl, if you keep redoing the test, they're just going to get a better grade. Well, yeah,
Yes.
that's the point. We
Yes.
don't say to our 3-year-old who's sitting in the kitchen, well, you didn't walk today, so guess what? Walking's done for you. We're moving on. It's a process.
It is.
So I said, why? First of all, why are you concerned about kids' grades getting higher? But secondly, that's where the learning happens. In my PBL school that right now is working on their winter exhibition, um, we give stuff back to kids all the time and say, look at this part of this was great, but you really have to rehash this. It's not an endpoint. The whole learning experience when you're doing projects and doing CTE stuff is the journey.
Hmm.
That's the whole experience. Now, PBL, as I said to you earlier before we were on here, has a really bad name. Why does it have a bad name, I ask you, Norm? Because it's been so poorly done. So I agree. Yeah, if you're having the kids do sugar cube pyramids, it's bad.
I did that. I learned.
Right. Oh, some of the projects I did when I was a regular ed teacher back in the day, I look back now and go, what were you thinking?
I always say, thank goodness kids are resilient.
Yeah. So, but if you're doing a project where, for example, we're getting a new building, which is a big deal for us, and we're now K through 12. I don't think I told you that we've
No,
expanded K through
that's
12.
great.
But our exhibition project this semester is the kids are working in teams to create what they want that new building to be because it's existing right now, but it has to be remodeled. But they have to match the building to our core values and beliefs in our mission statement.
I love that.
And then they do an exhibition night and they present it. And then they go to their advisories because we have advisories in all the schools, and they're going to present it to their parents. This is what we came up with.
I love that.
So that's hard.
Yes.
And there's we call them artifacts, but there's like 40 different artifacts they have to produce. And they're graded on competencies. So to me, that's a rigorous assignment. That's not a sugar cube pyramid. I do love you, Norm, but sugar cube pyramid's bad.
That was year three, and
Yeah.
I did learn my from my mistakes. I also learned that glue melts sugar, so that didn't go over very well. You know, there's a lot of things you learn in life, and I never repeated that one. So,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
there's so many things. As veteran people, do you look back some days and say, how did people even let me teach their kids?
oh,
I'm like,
yes,
oh my. And some of the rules that I had that were ridiculous. They were ridiculous. And
yes,
I have a anecdotal story. My best friend in the world since sixth grade was a school nurse. And she said to me, oh, Bob is a great teacher. He is the best teacher ever. I'm like, Kathy, how do you know that? Well, he never has any kids come to the nurse. The room, every time I go by it, is quiet and they're all lined up. I said that he's a good manager.
right,
You don't know if he's a good teacher. She's like, what do you mean? I said, teachers teach. And sometimes teaching looks like chaos. So we have to get over that feeling that teaching has to be what it used to be.
right.
A lot of kids don't learn that way at all. And
Yep.
kids learn a ton from each other. So if we let them up and talking, I get real nervous with a quiet classroom sometimes. Now, if it's a reading time, I want quiet. If it's
Right,
a writing time, I want quiet. But most of the time, why aren't we engaging?
exactly.
So I look back and I was a great manager, by the way, which is why from day one I got high evaluations because my kids never got in trouble. They came to my class, but I'm not sure if I was a great teacher. I think I became a pretty good teacher, but I'm not sure I was a great teacher then.
Well, I think my management style was initially just fear because I was a young guy that was somewhat emotional at times. So I had to. I think I scared kids often more than I could relate with them, and I didn't learn that until probably year five that I was scaring kids, and I tried to do as much as I could to then be more of a support person and a facilitator and become a teacher. And again, not a great teacher, but I think that I was effective at times with very certain things.
Right. Yeah. I was
It,
effective with the honors group and I was effective with the kids who were really struggling. That big middle center, I'm not sure.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, I think part of that comes because we were always within a full inclusive classroom and those are your kids and you're trying to help all of them. And it's really, really hard when you have your quote unquote gifted kids with your special needs kids. And a lot of times you're doing the same thing with different resources and just allowing them to figure
Correct.
out their pathway. But again, that takes time. It's not like
But
I came in and just started doing it.
right. And sometimes we just have a feel for kids. I realized I have a feel for kids, especially the naughty teenage boys that nobody else loves. I do. But I think that relationship building, I know everybody poo-poos that, oh, that's soft skills. I said, no, that's something I did before I knew what it was called. I didn't know
Mhm.
I was being a trusted adult. I didn't know I was building relationships. Now we have words for it.
Right.
That's a big part of my PBL school.
I love that
We have
too.
advisories, K through 12 advisories, by the way. The kindergarten advisories might be the cutest thing I ever saw in my life. And actually, our K through 3 is on a one-room schoolhouse model, which is super cool.
Wow.
The kids are all, and they do their projects together, and it's phenomenal. I love it.
Well,
But
we'll have to have a video of that and post that for people to see because that is a great idea.
okay, so we'll do when we get to the new building.
Perfect. Perfect.
So, but at the end of it all, if you look on our website, Great Bay Charter School, if you look on the website, the foundation of everything is Collins writing. And we're a PBL school.
They go hand in hand.
They
Again,
do.
you're communicating ideas.
One of the things that I've done with CTE schools is I've changed our focus correction areas, which you're familiar with, which
Mhm.
are the targets you're grading, the competencies. We've changed those to focus competency areas in the CTE schools. And we're actually thinking about changing that to all schools because a kid said to me, and this is another day I learned from a kid, I learn from kids every time I talk to them.
Same here.
He said to me, Ms. McDonough, why are you calling it a focus correction area? I said, well, that's what it's called, focus correction. Well, how do you know I have to be corrected?
Mm. That's a student that is going the right direction.
Yep. And I said, you're right. I said, I'm going to tell John Collins that. But for the CTE schools, I've already changed that. And I think we're talking about changing it. But that's how we have to go out. What have you done right? We're used to going at work as what have you done wrong? Let's look at what have you done right and let's fix the what mistakes you made to become what you've done right.
Correct.
So that's my philosophy.
So the one thing that I've noticed when we start talking PBLs with teachers is they don't even know where to start. So help me and help them understand how in a regular classroom you can form what's the beginning of a great PBL?
I would think that you have to decide before you do a project. And I say to teachers, just start doing one project. Don't think of the whole year. Just before you do any one project, why am I doing this? Don't just say because it's fun. I get a lot of teachers who say to me, I've always done this project. I said, why? Because the kids love it. I said, no, I'm talking about teaching and learning. Why are you doing the project? Well, because the kids love it. I said, okay, then we got to rethink that.
Mhm.
So I love understanding by design. I always have. I want you to think about the end. What do I want the kids to take away from this project? And
That's
then
a great starting point.
you have to identify what your role is, because your role is not just to give the kids the stuff. You're a coach and you're up and you're moving and you're looking at groups when they're working in small groups. You do not let them pick who they're working with. You do that with deliberately. You give everybody in the small group a role and you change their role every time. So one person is the spokesperson, one person is the secretary, but you give everybody whatever the project is, some kind of a role. And for us, the culmination of those projects is always an exhibition. So the kids have to exhibit their work, show what they know, or show what they've learned to outside visitors. Now, when we do the whole school exhibition, it's parents and you can't even move around. But if we're just doing small projects in one class, let's say there's a math project, we would invite local educators who aren't in our school because they kind of look askew at us. We would invite maybe the superintendent of the local school district. He's not our superintendent, but he's a great guy and he loves what we do. We would invite a couple of opinion leaders in the community to come and and ask them questions. And
Mhm.
we sometimes have given out suggestions for questions when they come in.
One of the things that you touched on is the group dynamic. And what a question I get often is how do you grade and how do you know who's accountable for the learning for a group project? How
Mhm.
do you go about knowing that each individual is coming with the outcomes that you wanted them to find?
Well, the first thing is you need to give them the outcomes. The second thing is we have a rubric for every project that's the group collaboration rubric. And as you're going around, that's why I say you're not sitting down. You're a coach. You're going to do that. And if it's a whole school project, the advisor is going to do that collaboration. And under there's a lot of competencies. Are you respectful? Did you do your? And we also have the kids fill out kind of a progress report weekly on who's doing what, who's done what, and who's not there. So it's not just you wait till the end. I think we always are waiting to get to the end to assess something. The real assessment happens on the journey.
Without a doubt, the feedback is also the driving force of the next step. So
Correct.
if you're not getting up and looking at what kids are doing, they're not going to be able to do
Correct.
the job you're asking them to do.
But too often, that's what people have done. Here's the project you got today to work on it. I'm going to go grade those 5 paragraph essays.
Yes.
And you can't do that. It is the teachers say to me, in fact, yesterday I was in the school because I go over a lot because I need to see kids. But I was over there and they're like, oh my God, we're so exhausted, Cheryl. I'm like, why are you exhausted? I'm the chair of the board still. So that's why they're like, it's exhibition coming up and I looked and the kids are working and it's amazing. So our artistic kids are doing the physical exhibit. There's always a written artifact. There's always a physical artifact. There's always a verbal artifact, and there's always technology artifact. Those go all the time, K through 12, until they graduate. And that feeds into portfolios.
You read my mind. I was going there next because I knew rubrics were highly involved, but for that cumulative idea of what we've produced, that portfolio assessment is critical in that kind of setting. So how do you set up your portfolios and what do you expect from your teachers and your kids both when it comes to
But
these?
first of all, the kids are very familiar with our competencies, and we have course competencies and we have school competencies. And that's something we constantly talk about. It's not an end of the year thing. We constantly talk about it. And all of our kids have ILPs, not to be confused with IEPs. They have ILPs, individualized learning plans. They set up their plan at the beginning of the year with their advisor, and they revisit every 8 weeks or so. So if things have changed, so that's the beginnings of that year's portfolio is their ILP for that year. So, for example, my son, when he went there 20 years ago, his ILP, and never teach your own kid, by the way, it's ridiculous, but his ILP was he's a history buff. Now he's turned out to have a Master of Fine Arts, but whatever. And he did his American history competencies by volunteering every day at the American History Museum in Exeter, New Hampshire. But in his portfolio, he had to prove how he met the same competencies as the kids who were in the classroom.
Oh, okay.
So the portfolio is all evidence. And I tell the kids, you're like your own lawyer. You have to prove to me in your portfolio how you have the evidence for how you have committed this success. How you are innocent of wrongdoing. And they laugh at me, but I said, that's what you're doing. You're collecting evidence. And our teachers are also portfolio-based evaluation. So we might do walkthroughs, we might do, you know, going in for a surprise, we might do a whole class evaluation or supervision. But that's a snapshot in time. So the teachers have competencies, similar to Danielson, by the way, but they have
Hmm.
the competencies and their portfolio is divided into the things that we're expecting. And if we have done a walkthrough or whatever, and they think that our evaluation didn't show something, they can put everything in their portfolio and they should be doing it all year. So if I say, Norm, I think your parent communication has been terrible this year, you can say, well, hang on, Cheryl. And you flip through your portfolio and you say, here's my log of phone calls. I've printed my emails. And all of a sudden I go, excellent.
Yeah.
Now I know that. So the portfolio is really an archive. And we have a lot of kids that I've traditionally called the sleeper cells. They're doing stuff and they know stuff that we never know they know because they're kind of the ones who are in the corner. They're thinking they shine with a portfolio.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if we're genuinely assessing what kids are competent at, a portfolio does that.
Right. I've done that with classes. Seventh graders, I used Webb's depth of knowledge to help them understand
Exactly.
how they can get their depth. And when I explained it to the kids, they went back in their work and they started making their own portfolio of level one, two, three, and four things that they've accomplished. And it was just a link. A lot of them already had it in technology-based structure. So they were just able to link it to this rubric grid that we put together. And they were so proud that they understood those levels and they could prove it. And my
Oh, they
feedback
love it.
became, it's
But
amazing.
then the final exhibition of the year is revisiting their ILP with an audience of 3 or 4 adults. So they have to bring in their parents, that's obvious. And then they have to invite 2 more adults that they would like to see their work. Some of them invite their minister, some of them invite the librarian. I take ballet classes. You never know who they're going to invite,
Hmm.
but they have to sit with their portfolio and explain what they've done that year. And an interesting thing that we do, though, I mean, we only have a couple of hundred kids, so we can do stuff that some schools can't do. But if a child goes to something like CTE for half the day, which they can, it's right on the other side of the parking lot. I'll say to them, boy, you're doing poorly in Miss Johnson's math class. What's going on, honey? Well, I don't know, because I can do it great in construction trades. I say, bring me your construction trades. Show me what you've done. He's met the competency.
Hmm.
The 4 walls don't mean that much if he can learn it in a different way. Or the child who does ballet, that's an art credit. That's an art competency.
Hmm.
So we actually we do externships, we do all kinds of things like that to get the kids out of thinking everything that you learn happens in this classroom. That's not, in fact, most of what you learn doesn't happen in this classroom.
Well,
We're like first base.
without a doubt. And I think back to going through college and then walking in my first classroom, I graduated and I did well, but I wasn't ready for my first classroom, not until I actually had to teach it. And I always go back to, again, that first year of, oh my gosh, I have to capture these kids, 150 kids in a day consistently on four different subjects. How am I going to do that? It's not what's taught in college.
Oh God, no. It's I say to people about law school, because as you know, I went to law school. I was brilliant in law school. I can't practice law. Like I don't even know how to file a motion. But I can tell you the laws and I can interpret the laws. Now, if I had decided to go into obviously attorneying full time, but they didn't teach us how to be a lawyer.
Right.
They taught us how to think. And I think the only reason I had any success with classroom practice when I was a young teacher is because I was that kid who hated high school. I hated everything about it. And teachers assumed, therefore, that I was not talented in any way, which was a bad thing for them to assume because, you know, being an intellectual kid can go one of two ways. You can be Einstein or you can be Ted Bundy. So they were pushing me to be Bundy-esque, and I said to myself, when I'm a teacher, and I always wanted to be a teacher. So it's not like I didn't like education. I want to be a teacher. I want to be an English teacher. I said, when I'm a teacher, I'm going to do something to make sure that those kids all feel respected.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing I say to teachers. You have to have a respectful classroom. It goes both way.
Yeah, that's
Have
one
to
of the
have.
things that I work with new teachers when I have that group in front of me is, they want respect and kids don't do that as much anymore as they used to. When we were in school, you respected elders, period. Didn't matter.
Right.
But now there's an earned respect on both sides, and
That's it. Yeah.
it's an
And
earned respect you have to have.
I was never taught that the teacher was supposed to be respectful of the kid when I was in school, but I knew that from my experiential background.
Hmm.
I didn't, although I have one teacher who went on to be the principal and hired me to teach there. I have one teacher that recognized, and she pulled me aside one day. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm sitting in the back row." "I know. What are you doing?" "I just pulled your test scores." I said, "I don't know." And from that day forward, though, I knew, wait a minute, she cares about what's going on with me.
Hmm.
No other teacher in high school ever did that. And so I did well for her. And to this day, I still call her every day. She's
Oh
now
wow,
84.
wow.
Yep. She was in the hospital with me when I had all of my children. That's relationship building. And that's what taught me you need to be relational. Some teachers have said to me, that's not my job. I said, it's a big part of your job.
It's a big part. It's the part.
Yep.
It is
And
the
it's
part.
kind of, I think when you think about me as a consultant, I tried to build relationships. That's why we still talk.
Hmm.
Ryan Irwin, your buddy, my
I
buddy,
I
he
talked to him last
texts
month.
he texts me frequently. Hey, you told me we were never going to talk again. Here we are. And I worked with him right through airport.
Hmm.
So I think I took that lesson to being a consultant, and I had a pretty successful career, or I've had with
Hmm.
consulting. I'm slowing it down now, but because I tried to build relationships.
That is the key.
Yep.
You can't go in and force feed anybody.
And I
It just
didn't.
doesn't work.
I would say to you, in fact, I think I might have said to you, Norm Blotter, just promise me you'll give me a chance. That's all I'm looking for. Just listen to what I say. And then by like January, you're like, you know what, Cheryl, I think maybe so.
Well, but and that's something that it's a trust deficit. When you have been given so many other consultants that aren't doing what is realistic and they aren't talking your language and they don't understand the issues that you're going through, you come in with a trust deficit like, oh, here we go again. And it
Yep.
had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with the people that I
Oh,
had
I knew
prior.
that. I,
And
I,
so, and I go the same way. I said, I need to give them a chance because they might have this deficit and they need to give me a chance because of that deficit. I'm going to work extra hard to make sure that I win their trust.
and that's what I did. And that's why I tried to make everything fun, but it's that respect thing again. But it's also I was a teacher for 20 years in the classroom. Then I was an administrator. So I've worked in schools a long time. Every consultant I ever saw until John Collins disrespected us. They said, what you're doing is wrong. Well, you've got to do it this way. I have this memory of these assertive discipline was the name of the program, and the whole district had to do it. Do you remember that
I
program?
do remember that one. Yes.
It was a husband and wife. And I remember saying to the principal, why do I have to do this program? How many times this year have you seen a kid of mine? Never. I said, and what do you always commend me on? Well, your classroom behavior is perfect. So you're breaking me? Like you want to break what's going right. And those people were so disrespectful. And that's why we went away angry. I hope that when I was working with you guys, you always went away and said, well, I might not agree with all of it, but she's listening to us.
Right. And I'm willing to try because it sounds like it's coming from a place of experience, which definitely is something that not all consultants have.
Well, and I'm very kid focused.
Yes.
I'm very kid focused. Like the kid who said, why do you call it correction areas? I'm like,
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
I walk into our school right now and I say hi to the kids all the time. I go through the classrooms and these two naughty ninth grade girls, naughty, naughty, naughty. Every time they see me in the room, we love it when you come, and they get up and give me a hug. I think you get more from kids when you're that person.
Right. Without a doubt.
I
Th-
think you get more from kids when instead of screaming at them for a stupid 10th grade boy joke, you laugh and go, I don't want to hear that again, but it was hysterical.
Yeah.
There's ways to do things.
And that's again, I was emotional in my first few years, and maybe even a couple times my last few years. But it's not it's something that I've learned over time that that emotion doesn't do
Mm-mm.
what the intent was. The intent was to try to make it stop, and usually it made it worse.
Right.
So
I
it
mean,
was
don't get
really a
me
learning
wrong, there's
process.
times when a good, because I never would explode at kids. Occasionally they knew this was a big deal because Mrs. McDonough is angry with us now. Like bullying,
Hmm.
like things that are just you're not doing that here. But if you yell every day, yelling doesn't mean anything.
No,
If you
no.
raise your voice twice a year, suddenly they're like, ooh, I got to listen to her.
So I'm going to start the downward slope of our discussion because I want to make sure we have time to talk about some of these tools that you have available for teachers. Um, in wrapping up our idea of PBL and portfolio, where do you suggest all teachers should start if they're about to implement their PBLs for the first time?
I think they should start with showing kids the competencies. Stop thinking about grading. Say, when this project is over or when this year is over, depending on how they're doing it, you need to have shown me evidence of this, this, and this. So doing the project is where you collect the evidence. The portfolio is where you put it. And our kids have K through 12 portfolios, by the way. And we give them a choice, which we didn't in the beginning. Some kids really want to do a physical portfolio. And I say, fine, that's who I am, to be honest with you. And I'm very
Mhm.
technology savvy, but I like a paper. So we say to them, you can either do this or you can do that. We have a Google site where they do the portfolios, or you can do it in paper, or you can do a combo, as long as I can see where you are. So I think that's important. Same with the teachers. We say, if you want to keep a physical portfolio for us, you can do that. If you want to keep an online portfolio, you can do that. So that's where it starts. Because unless you know what you're doing, where you're going, you can't build a project.
I think those logistical things are a lot of times what holds people back because they don't know how to manage that piece.
Well, and when I work with schools on PBL, I bring them 4 or 5 examples because there's not one right way, but you always have to know what your end is. That's the
Mhm.
one right. And you have to do a lot of planning. We do a lot of planning sheets. And one of the things we frequently do is we give in the project, there's several things that kids are responsible for producing, but we also give one free choice. So you can produce something to meet a competency that's not on this list. So whether it's a little video or you want to play music, we don't care. You can pick one of your own.
Well, I also tell teachers when we're doing PBLs, the planning is intensive, especially the very first time you try something. But the teaching that you do and the evaluation process is easier if it's planned well. And
Oh,
and it changes the whole time consumption piece of how your time is used.
and so what we do with the whole school project, Stacy, the director, I was sitting with her yesterday, and she'll build the overarching project. with the school-wide competencies, but each subject area teacher builds their projects that feed into that bigger project.
Yeah, I love that. That whole idea of collaboration and cross-curricular, again, is something that a lot of schools are asking to do, but they're afraid to take that first step, and
It's
how that
scary.
it is scary, and it is
Well,
work.
if you haven't built that climate with teachers too, it's hard for them to work together.
Hmm.
Like our teachers work together from day one. We have a student handbook and a teacher handbook that we call the community guidelines or something like that. And the teachers build that. I don't. Stacy doesn't. And we sit at a table. And the rule that I started there years ago when I was the director was we're going to put these rules into these expectations. But I want to know right now, is every one of you going to enforce it? Because if Norm's not enforcing it and Cheryl is, I'm always the bad guy.
Hmm.
So don't tell me you want this telephone policy, but five of you let the kids have them out.
Right.
And that's what we built. So if you have to build that collaboration, that community feeling with your teachers, doesn't mean you all have to like each other, but you have common goals, just like the kids. There's a common goal, and the teacher project is to let's get kids to competency this year. But you have to work together to do that.
Right. I've actually, I'll share this with you down the road, but I've been working on an evaluation system that goes for kids, teachers, and also for the interview process. Uh, you- why not have them all aligned?
Well, I thought we were great having the kid one and the teacher one. Nice. Yeah, I want to see that one.
Yeah, I'm
I want to
working
see
on
that
it.
one.
I'll give you the rough draft as we go.
Okay,
So
good.
tell me a little bit now. These are the things that I wanted to make sure we got to. I want to talk about your CTE desktop guide, and I want to talk to you about your power tools that you have for Collins. So let's start with the CTE desktop guide that you're using right now.
The CTE desktop guide is it's really a four-page laminated folder with all the essentials for my CTE teachers to put literacy experiences into their classroom in an authentic manner. Yep. And they love this folder. They love this folder. Our power tools, I mean, power tools can be negotiable with different schools, but the big ones are 10% summary. A lot of people say, why would you want the CTE people to be doing 10% summary? Well, the 10% summary is all about informational reading. The work keys exam, which we talked about, is a reading test. So we need to train kids to do reading. I said, no, you're not going to read a novel. I don't want you reading The Lottery. I want you getting instruction manuals. I want you pulling examples from the work keys test. I want you to see employee guides, things that the kids need, and you need to have them read that and assess it. So that's one of our power tools. Vocab, we talked about, I consider one of the power tools. Um, Anything can be a power tool depending on how you attack it, but there's some things that are really the cornerstone.
Well, you also mentioned quick writes as part
Oh,
of that.
quick writes. Oh, kids, and that's kind of that vocab thing that I was talking about earlier, but kids who write a little bit every day get better at everything. So one of the ones that I've given the CTE guys to use is a time card. So I have time cards that they made, they designed them, and at the end of every session, CTEs have different kinds of sessions. Some
Mhm.
do a whole day, some do a half day, some do 90 minutes. But at the end of every session, the kids have to fill out their time card with what they accomplished and what they need to accomplish tomorrow.
Yeah, and in combination with that, the idea of recapping and summarizing, you can summarize anything, and I think it's a 0.75 on Hattie's scale that it's so impactful. You have to do those things, and
Correct.
it's about understanding what you have accomplished every day and owning it.
Absolutely. And the 10% summary is for reading, but there's no reason you can't do a summary at the end of the day, which really the time card is. But you
Mhm.
could also do one we have, I'll explain it little because it's a little bit bigger, but it's only a 5-minute assignment. But you have to create a sheet for a student that was absent that says, what were the 5 things we learned today? What materials do you need? Questions like that. And they have to do it at the end of every class. Another thing I'm working extensively with which I'm writing a CTE book now. But one of the things I'm working extensively is reflection.
Hmm.
Teachers and students don't know how to meaningfully reflect.
I
So
agree.
that's a power tool for anybody.
Yes. That also goes back to the good teaching model where a lot of teachers don't have that closure at the end of each session. And that is something that, oh, time's run out. I'll see you tomorrow. And then they lose that idea of recapping, reflection, and summary. Whereas if you can build that last 5 minutes consistently into your classroom, it will change the outcomes of your day without a doubt.
Yep. And we also say take a couple of minutes at the beginning if you can. What do
Hmm.
you have to do today? Write it down for me. It gives them a roadmap.
Hmm.
I always say some kids are natural goal setters, like my daughter. She knew what she was going to do when she was 40, when she was in eighth grade. Like she has set every goal for the day, for the minute. My boys, one's 45, oh dear God. But they just weren't goal. But if you make them just say today, tell me two things you're absolutely going to accomplish. Or tell me two things that really confused you yesterday so I can go over them with you.
Hmm.
Celebrate their confusion. Celebrate that they're asking you that. Because when you don't, they're scared to ask.
Exactly. And that sets the right tone that you want in that PBL classroom without a doubt.
Absolutely. And that's why PBLs give them permission to be wrong a lot.
They have to be wrong.
Right.
Yes.
And when I say to teachers, remember, when you're grading everything for right or wrong, it's really winners and losers.
Mhm.
One kid's always going to be the winner, let's be real.
Yeah.
And these other kids who takes a different path to learning are going to be the losers. So make it a risk-free and kids learn. When you're scared of being wrong, you're not learning because you're so scared of being wrong.
I think everybody needs to watch Austin's butterfly video if you haven't seen that before,
I
because
haven't.
it is one about first graders drawing a butterfly and how kids provide feedback to get to the final product that they accept. And it's amazing. It's just,
Okay.
wow, a first grader did that. It's really, really cool. So I will try to post that link at the end of this video so people have access to
I
it. But
love that. Yeah.
it's one of those that I show teachers about what first graders are capable of. And as long as you give proper feedback and specific timely feedback, you're going to find
Oh yeah.
products.
That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And when I go and I look at teachers' work and I say, geez, gosh, this isn't assessed yet. I know I didn't get to it. I said, but it's a month away. It's a month old. The
Yes,
kids have forgotten what you even did, so your feedback is meaningless.
correct.
You
Without a
have to
doubt.
do, and I understand. I was an English teacher. I get it that it's really tedious and hard and a lot of work to get through all of those papers, but we have to.
Well, I'm eating up time here that I didn't plan on, but I love the idea that if you are doing those small chunks along the way, that bigger chunk at the end isn't as big because you probably already know where they're at. And that's something that those formative assessments do is allow you to predict what you are expecting from the kid next. So that bigger product, without them even writing, you go, they're going to probably get this level of competency just based on what I already know.
Well, and I read this article recently, and I cannot remember who it's by, but they said there is formative assessment, summative assessment, anything can be either. Anything can be. So stop thinking, just they put it into phases of assessment. And I loved it. I'll send you the article. It might have been cited in one of the newsletters too.
Okay.
Uh, but I liked that idea because I've often said if I give what I think is a summative and 60% of the kids don't understand and show me that it just became formative for me. I'm
Mhm.
not going to make it an endpoint. I'm going to say something went wrong. We got to revisit.
Without
I
a
know
doubt.
that some people don't like that philosophy, but if you're about learning and not about so much judging it, you will suddenly make it summative. And I've also discovered when I give something that I think is going to be a formative, every single kid in the class nailed it. I'm not going to waste more time doing what they already are ahead of me.
Right.
So
I
anything can be formative or summative is Cheryl McDonough's weird theory.
I agree with your weird theory, so that makes us both weird. And
Okay, good.
I think
Well, we
that's a
knew
great
that.
place. Oh yeah, that's a great place to wrap things up. So to summarize our chat, uh, summarizing portfolios and PBLs in our classroom is a good thing. And we
Hmm.
need to learn from CTE teachers and also vice versa. There are things that we can, share with PBLs, or I'm sorry, with CTE teachers. Too many letters in this
Yeah, there's
thing.
letters everywhere.
There's letters everywhere. But I think that it's a two-way street. We can learn from them, they can learn from us, and really we can learn from each other. It's not us or them.
Correct.
It's we're
Well, but
teachers.
unfortunately, before we go, too many of the academic schools think of it as us and them. Too many of the CTE schools think of it as us and them. So we need to, I'm doing actually some collaborative workshops in Vermont, which is fun.
And that's where we have to be. We have to use each other's resources and expertise to be able to do this thing right for kids.
Okay.
So would you like to summarize PBLs and portfolios in your eyes?
PBLs and portfolios to me are allowing kids to give you evidence of what they've learned and what they can show you. So in their own way. So they don't all have to take the same test when they don't learn the same way. You want to see the outcomes. So to me, it's evidence collecting. And that idea of saying to the kids, oh, you're the police and you've got to find this evidence that you know this. I had one I did was a treasure chest. Here's a treasure chest. Where's it from? You can only use what's in it. So that idea of collecting evidence, I think, is a very powerful learning tool.
And I will agree. And that's the lawyer side coming out in you without a doubt.
Probably,
Yes.
probably, but the kids love that word, artifacts and evidence. That's what we tell them, artifacts and evidence.
Evidence has been my word for the last couple of years. What
Yeah.
evidence do you have? So I appreciate your time as always. Great information. If you're looking to get in touch with Cheryl, please contact me, or I can, I don't know if Cheryl likes having her email out there, but I could share
Oh, you
that
get
as well.
My Collins email, it's great. And you can go to the Collins website too.
I will post
There's
those
lots
on
of
the
free
video.
stuff.
Yes,
Yeah, there's
they give
tons of free tools.
and sign up for their newsletter because it has great information in that as well. Cheryl writes it, but it's great information, and it's something that I learn every day. When I get those, I go back and I look at the resources, and they are great resources, great ideas. So Cheryl, thank you for your time,
Thank you, Norm.
and I appreciate everything you do, and I'll look forward to all those things that we planned on sharing together, so we can see what's up next for both of us.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Have a
Okay.
great day. And as always, people watching, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Thank you very much.